Good evening. It's a little after 6, so I think we'll get started. I'd like to welcome you to the annual meeting of the Shaker Regional School District. This is the first deliberative session, and it will consist of an explanation, discussion, and debate of each warrant article. Every warrant article must be acted upon and moved to the ballot for final consideration by the voters. And the second session, as you know, is Tuesday, March 12th, Belmont High School here from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, and in Canterbury at the Old Town Hall from 7 to 7. I want to make a few introductions. Michelle Lewis, Chair of the Regional Shaker Regional School Board, will announce the table. You can do it with the microphone. I can have them all. Stand up here.
Okay, we have Megan Glynn, who is the school district attorney. We have Michael Tercey, who's the superintendent of schools. Debbie Thompson, who's the business administrator. Greta Olson-Wilder, who is the clerk, correct? Yep. Mark, now I'm forgetting, Eckberg, sorry. Mark Eckberg, school board member, Sean Embry, vice chair, Jill Smith, Jeff Roberts, Alice Todd, who's Rand? And Randy Johnson.
Thank you, Michelle. I also want to thank a few other folks that are here this evening. The Shaker Regional School Board also has an advisory budget committee, and that's Jay Grafton from Belmont. I don't know if he's here. Heidi Cheney from Canterbury, and Andrew Fournier from Canterbury. And I also want to thank the folks on the checklist in the back of the room from Belmont. We have Brenda Paquette, Donna Shepherd, and I don't see Nikki Wheeler, but she's also one of them. And from Canterbury, we have Brenda Murray, Denise Stoika, and Pamela Smiling. Now let me remind you, if you have not already done so, you need to register, check in with the supervisor's checklist and get one of these cards. Now, are there any non-resident, non-voters in the audience? Just raise your hand. Good. Thank you. And normally, only qualified voters can speak at the deliberative session, but we do have some folks here that may have to speak to a warrant article. These people include Michael Tercey, our superintendent, Debbie Thompson. There may be some other folks from the central office, and of course we have our school attorney, Megan Glynn, here to speak as well. On the inside, you should all have a copy of this. On the inside cover are some moderator rules for debate. I'm going to make a few comments outside of what's on this list. As a moderator, I'm not going to be following the Robert's Rules of Order. I don't want to get bogged down in parliamentary procedure. I want to keep things simple. And I'm going to mention some things that I think are very important. I may mention them twice, and maybe here and in my remarks. As the meeting goes along, as a moderator, I will be developing rules and making rulings. And you, of course, may challenge me if you wish. It's very important that no one speak unless you have permission to do so. And we do not want anyone to be interrupted when they're speaking. Now, there's two opportunities where you might do that, and you might feel compelled to do that. One is a point of order, or a calling of the question, if you've heard a lot of comments and you want us to vote. If you do want to make a motion, when someone else has the microphone. If you could wait until they're done speaking, that would be very nice. All cell phones should be off. I should note there's not a lot of exits here. There's an exit back here and an exit here in case of an emergency. The registered voters here are the members of the legislative body. Make sure you have a colored card. You'll need it. I intend to read each article and then ask for a motion, and then I will ask for a second to bring the article to the floor for discussion. A member of the school board will explain the article if necessary, and I will accept debate in any proposed amendments. When making a motion or second, please state your name and town clearly for the record. And we have the microphone here for you to speak at. And if you wish to speak, come on up and you can have a seat at one of these chairs. You don't have to stand. And we also ask that there's a pad of paper behind the microphone. If you would print your name so that the secretary can record your name correctly in the minutes. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes to address an article, and if there's not a lot of people speaking, you can take longer. If it's shorter, we may have to change that. Any proposed amendments must be in writing, must be legible, and signed. We'll only have one amendment, will be allowed on the floor at one time. And you can make a motion to restrict consideration, but that cannot be made till after the article has been voted to be and moved to the ballot. The normal path for each warrant article is I will announce the article, then I will read the article, I will seek a motion to consider the article, then I will seek a second and bring it to the floor. We will discuss, debate, and amend. And if it's amended, I will read the amended article, and then we will vote as needed, and I'll announce the results. And then, after no further discussion, will be moved to the ballot. And I'll go on to the next article. Our job here tonight is really to review all the articles and revise them as necessary so that they are placed on the ballot for voting on March 12th. So let me begin with Article 1, Election of Officers. To choose by ballot 2 school board members, one from the pre-existing district of Belmont to serve for a term of 3 years, and one from the pre-existing district of Canterbury to serve for a term of 3 years. Candidates must be residents of Belmont and Canterbury respectively, but will be elected at large. I have a motion. From the floor, I need a motion. Thank you, Jim Miller. I need a second. Did you get that? Is there any discussion about the election of officers? None? There's no discussion, no action, then we will move it to the ballot. Before I go to the next one, just let me let you know who the candidates are. In Canterbury, it's Michelle Lewis and Jessica Treadway, and in Belmont, it's Jeffrey Roberts. Article 2 is the operating budget. Shall the school district raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $28,929,775. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $28,823,292, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Shaker Regional School District, or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10, and Roman numeral 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The school board recommends passing this appropriation. Majority vote required. May I have a motion?
Andrew Fournier.
Andrew Fournier. And a second? Heidi Cheney. Is there any discussion? Please state your name and write it on the pad as well.
Hi, Jim Miller from Canterbury. Is this on?
Now the light is on. That's a good sign. Jim Miller from Canterbury. I have a couple of questions. One has to do with what looks like an almost 20% increase in the bus contract. And if someone could explain why he agreed to that. That sounds like an excessive change in the contract, but I'm sure there are factors at play. Another has to do with line 1100. This is the salary and benefits of general education. That 2022-23 year, the actual versus budget saw about $872,000 under budget in terms of spending. That was rather large compared to the previous 4 years. And so I'm curious as to why we underspent by so much when the enrollment in the district stayed reasonably the same. So that's another one that was sort of a mystery. I guess that's good enough to start.
All right, thank you for the questions. Let me tackle the transportation question first. We do not have an agreement at this moment. What that is a placeholder based on our current, where we are in negotiations with our student. I can't get into the negotiations too much. I think one of the difficulties we're having is we don't have many options in this state for busing. And we're also seeing some increases from the first student side that are being passed on to us, increases for their workers, benefits, all that stuff. Is there anything else I'm missing, Michael? All right, for the regular education, I want to make sure I understood the question. Were you talking about the supplies and printed materials?
Salaries and benefits.
So,
Between adopted and expended.
yep.
Underspent by $872,000.
Yeah. So I believe the reason why it was underexpended was just the number of vacancies that we had in the district. We are getting closer to full staffing. That's one of the reasons why we had underexpended in that line.
Just to elaborate on what Sean was saying, so we saw that significant amount, particularly due to vacancies that we had throughout the year that we were unable to fill. So we're carrying that salary and that benefit package throughout the year, and then towards the end of the year, once we still have those vacancies, those show as an underspent line, both salary and benefits. Transportation, just as Sean said, we are still in negotiations with First Student. They really do have the monopoly on the area, and we are not the only school district that has seen a 20 to 25% increase in those contracts. districts are carrying the brunt of negotiations that First Student had with their union and their collective bargaining agreements that they've passed on to local districts.
Page 20. On page 20 also, I just want to highlight that, for the unreserved fund balance, we did return 1.3 million after that year.
Any other comments, questions, amendments for Article 2, the operating budget? Jim?
Sorry, what you just said made me curious. When you said we returned $1,373,000, returned to whom?
Taxpayers.
How do we receive that? Does that flow through? Yeah, because that's been a curiosity, is we ever get money back, and I never get a check.
So we don't turn checks over to individual taxpayers. What happens when we close the books at the end of the year and there is a fund balance that we need to, quote, return? When we do our estimated revenues and revise the revenues in September, before we send that to DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, that becomes revenue that we don't need to collect in the following year. So that goes into calculation for the tax rate setting. So it becomes a revenue to offset and lower what the tax rate is.
Thank you.
One other thing about the unexpended piece, and I know we talked about positions not being filled, that was specifically some positions at the high school. But the other thing, last year when we brought a budget forward for 2024, 2025, it included the removal, or actually the cut, of some support staff positions that we've been carrying on our books, but we hadn't been able to fill for years. So it's a combination of one, support staff, as well as actually some teaching positions. And so what we did last year to kind of right the ship, so we weren't carrying that, is we really looked at staffing levels as a board to determine, to kind of level set that. So just so you're aware of what happened from 2023, 2024, and when we proposed the, what are we in now? 2022, 2023, and we saw this, we then adjusted and put forward a budget that was less for this year. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to move Article 2, the operating budget, to the ballot. It has been unamended, so it's going in its original form. Thank you. Ada, how you change?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration.
Come up here, please. And do you have that written down? Okay, we can.
like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 2.
Do we have a second? Mr. Fournier? Is there any discussion? You ready for the question? The motion is a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 2. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Article 3, equipment purchase. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $42,000 for the purpose of purchasing exercise equipment for the Belmont High School fitness room? The school board recommends passing this article, majority vote required. Sean, all right? Sean? I need a motion. First motion? I need a motion. I need a second. Mr. Craigie? Sean?
So I talked a little bit about this during the budget hearings. We're taking a little bit of a different approach. Unlike the Articles 4, 5, and 6 that are expendable trust funds, where no amount is being raised from taxation. Article 3 is a little bit different in that we're looking to raise $42,000 for the equipment room. That's right on the other side of this wall. Currently, that equipment, pretty old. Some of it's in disrepair. Most of it was donated a number of years ago. It was donated as, somebody's home equipment that they didn't need anymore. Considered consumer home grade equipment. There was a quote done to get an idea of if we were to put in a treadmill, put in a rower, put in an indoor cycle, some dumbbells, and a number of other things. I have a huge list in front of me. But the idea is to replace that equipment with commercial grade equipment. And I had a couple people ask me after the public hearings the difference between a home equipment versus commercial grade. And just wanted to kind of point out a couple things that the home equipment that is in there right now, similar to what I have at my house, the idea is, to use a couple days a week. Most people don't even use it a couple days a week after they purchase it. But the idea is this commercial equipment is heavier, it's stronger, it's got a longer warranty, it's got better parts. You pay more for it, but the idea is it's going to get used more often than your typical home equipment. So that's what we're looking to put in that room. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. There's a question yet? Beth Blair? You have to write your name down.
Is this equipment going to be used for all the students, just the sports students? How is this going to be used and what's the expected
Yeah, I should have mentioned that.
lifetime of this?
All students, it'll be eligible for all students, not just athletes. The other thing is there is a desire to increase the curriculum piece that we're not really doing here at the high school because of the current state of the equipment. So the idea would be we would also have, whether it's phys ed or health fitness classes that would utilize that room as well.
Thank you. Oh, and what's the expected life expectancy of this equipment?
What's that?
The expected life expectancy of the equipment? How long would you probably be able to use it
Well, I
for?
can tell you, I looked up the equipment, and so the equipment itself has like 10-year motor warranty, 7-year parts warranty. That's just being covered by the manufacturer. It's no cost to us if something fails. So I would expect, 10 years out of it, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any further discussion on this article? Hearing none, I'm gonna move the article to the ballot as unamended original form. Article 4, addition to school facilities and grounds expendable trust fund. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $150,000 to be added to the school facilities and grounds expendable trust fund, which was established at the March 31st, 1997 annual district meeting. The sum is to come from the June 30th, 2024 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. No amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends passing this article. Majority vote required. Motion? Amanda LeBlanc. Greta, do you have that one? And I need a second? A second, please? Jim Miller? Are there any, I think Mr. Roberts is gonna deal with this one. Jeff?
It was March 31st, 1997. 21st, sorry, 21st. Yeah, the 31st.
What we're gonna do, we're gonna take a motion to
All right.
fix, do you need to have a motion to fix it?
It's right, it's correct.
Oh, it's right in the book, I read it wrong. Oh. Okay.
All right. Usually we do $100,000 is what we've asked 2 years ago. And last year we started adding 50,000 because in 25, 26, we're planning to fix the high school parking lot and redo it. And that's gonna be a cost, the estimated cost as of right now, $482,000. So we wanted to preload the budget so we didn't have to ask a lot of money in 1 year. And then as soon as we pay for the high school, we'll go back to asking for $100,000 like we typically used to do. And any other questions?
Thank you. Are there any further debate, discussion, amendments? Hearing none. Article 4 is moved to the ballot as originally presented. Now, Article 5, I think we need to fix the date on that. I think the book says March 5th, 2020, but it's actually 2010, is that correct? Do we need to have a motion to do that? If you would,
No, not that one, the article first, and then she'll have the motion. After it's brought.
okay, yes, we haven't brought it to the floor.
Right.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let's see. Article 5, addition to the Technology Expendable Trust Fund, shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $20,000 to be added to the Technology Expendable Trust Fund, which was established at the March 5th, 2020 annual district meeting. The sum is to come from the June 30th, 2024 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends passing this article. Majority vote required. Motion to bring it to the floor. One, Mr. Fournier. A second? Al Edelstein. Want to do a motion?
I make a motion to amend Article 5 to correct the date of establishment of the Technology Expendable Trust Fund to March 5th, 2010.
That's fine.
I'll second.
We have a second? Okay. Is there any discussion? I didn't think so. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
So similar to the previous, where we discussed, if there are unused funds at the end of the year, we take some and we transfer, if you guys approve, into trust funds. This one is for technology. And what it does is it helps us create almost like a savings plan for things we want to do in the future. Looking at our capital improvement plan for technology, we have some big ticket items. The wireless network needs to be upgraded. That's going to be $100,000. Our security system needs to be updated. That's going to be $40,000. So as you can see, we rely heavily on technology to run the district, and we appreciate your support in this matter.
Are there any questions, discussion, amendments? Hearing, seeing none, I'm moving the article to the ballot. Has not been amended and, oh, yes, it was amended. I'm gonna reread it. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $20,000 to be added to the Technology Expendable Trust Fund, which was established at the March 5th, 2010 annual district meeting. This sum is to come from the June 30, 2024 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No amount to be raised from taxation. It's moved, the article is moved to the ballot. Article 6, establish a food service equipment expendable trust fund. Shall the school district vote to establish a food service equipment expendable trust fund for RSA 19820C, Roman numeral 5, for the purpose of replacing food service equipment as needed, and to raise and appropriate up to $20,000 to be placed in the fund. This sum is to come from the June 30th, 2024 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No amount to be raised in taxation, and further to name the school board as agents to expend from the fund. The school board recommends passing this article, majority vote required. Can I have a motion? Jessica Treadway. And can I have a second? Doris Hampton. Any questions? Oh, wait a minute, Jill. We're going to be handling this, I think.
The Food Service Equipment Expendable Trust, if approved, would be a new addition to the Shaker Regional School District. During our current school year, the Belmont Middle School steamer, boiler, kettle unit, as well as the boiler at the elementary school in Belmont became inoperable, and we needed to replace them in order to serve lunches. The equipment was replaced, but discussion ensued as to how to best handle things like this going forward, which led to Article 6. Due to the high costs associated with replacing kitchen equipment, we were hoping this would help with budgeting and replacing things that will be needed in the upcoming future.
Thank you. Could you sign in over here?
This is Karen Gilbert from Belmont. I just have a question. How much money is this in this unassigned fund that you keep mentioning that money is coming from?
Those monies vary from year to year, so we don't have an estimate for this current year. We usually do that towards the beginning of the spring season, but it varies from year to year. I believe in the budget book, I don't know what page it's on, you will see what we had for fund balance that went back to offset taxes. So again, it varies from year to year.
So you say you give it back to offset the taxes, but then you turn around and put it into a trust fund?
The monies go into the trust prior to any monies going back to offset taxes. So the way the warrant articles are set up they're in order specifically. So you'll see the Building and Grounds Trust Fund is the first warrant article where monies from the fund balance would go into. That's $150,000. Next, you see the Technology Trust Fund, which would be $20,000. If we had $170,000 in fund balance, it would fund those two trusts and potentially not the others. So it really varies as to what that fund balance is from year to year as to where those monies go. But according to the order that we have those warrant articles, it would go into the Building and Grounds first and then those after that.
You also have 3 articles that have money coming out of this unassigned trust fund. So you got 6 articles. 6 groups of funds being funded by this unassigned fund.
No, we have the Building and Grounds Trust Fund, the Technology Trust Fund, as well as the Food Service Trust Fund. So that's 3 funds that
Alright.
monies would go into in that order.
So is this money coming out of the $1.4 million that you said you're returning, so it's not taxed?
The $1.3 million that were being returned, that was after monies were put into the trust funds based on what the voters voted on. So after those trust funds are, those monies go into those trust funds, any of those monies left in the fund balance are then returned to offset taxes the following year.
Okay, so you're offsetting taxes by $1.3 million this year?
Yes.
So if you add all the funds, trust funds that you're funding, you could have had a $2 million over budget or under budget?
No, so we're in the different fiscal years, so the end of this year, we have to estimate what that fund balance would be. Once, if the voters vote to approve those warrant articles, the fund balance will go into those trust funds, and then any monies remaining of a fund balance would then go back to offset taxes the following year.
All right.
So we're still in the process right now, we're still within our current fiscal year. At the end of this fiscal year is when we would know what our fund balance is, after we funded the trust funds that the voters voted last March.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
One other thing, in the last couple of years, we had heard from the voters that, like, one of the things the board considered was, why is there so much money at the end of the year? If you have, 1.6 million, 1.5 million at the end of the fiscal year, and then you're asking to transfer the money, which is one of the reasons last year during budget time, we took a really hard look at our support staff staffing levels and things like that, so that we were really trying to fill what we could, which also resulted in really looking at what our competitive salaries were when we looked at the current budget that we're in, so 23-24. So we're not anticipating, unless Debbie can correct me, such a large fund balance that we had the previous years to return. And so the other thing to be aware of is if we end the year and the voters vote to fund, say, all of these trust funds, or the transfer of money, but we only have 30,000 left at the end of the year, we would only, if you voted for it, transfer the 30,000 to the school facilities and grounds expendable trust. So, correct? Yeah. So I'm highlighting that because we, as a board, had discussed over the last number of years, some of you have asked questions, why is there such a large chunk of change left at the end of the year? So that is one way we were addressing that.
It's page 27 in your book, you'll see the chart that goes back to 2011 of the reserve fund balance. Then went back to offset taxes.
Are there any additional questions, amendments, or discussion on Article 6? I move Article 6 to the ballot. Now we've come to the end of the night. We have no further business. I need a motion to adjourn or dissolve this deliberative session. I have a motion. Mr. Fornia, second. Ms. Edelstein. I'd like to thank you all. Don't forget to vote on March 12, and safe travels.